Honey, wake up. New Gallup poll just dropped. July 11, 2025, surge in U.S. concern about immigration has abated. Story highlights: 30% of Americans want immigration decrease, down from 55% a year ago. Record high 79% consider immigration good for the country. Support down for border wall and mass deportation. All good news. Americans have grown markedly more positive toward immigration over the past year, with the share wanting immigration reduced dropping from 55% in 2024 to 30% today. At the same time, a record high 79% of U.S. adults say immigration is a good thing for the country. These shifts reverse a 4-year trend of rising concern about immigration that began in 2021, reflecting changes among all major party groups. Primarily because it was the Democrats that were in power at the time were not particularly good on immigration, and the Republicans went as hard as possible, claiming that the Democrats were, letting in a whole bunch of brown people to your wife or whatever it is they worry about in their minds before they fall asleep. With illegal border crossings down sharply this year, fewer Americans than in June 2024 back hardline border enforcement measures, while more favor offering pathways to citizenship for undocumented immigrants already in the U.S. These findings are based on a June 2nd to 22nd Gallup poll of 1,402 U.S. adults, including oversamples of Hispanic and Black Americans weighted to match national demographics. The same poll finds many more Americans disapproving than approving of President Donald Trump's handling of immigration. Trump's 21% approval rating on the issue among Hispanic adults is below his 35% rating nationally, with the deficit likely reflecting that group's low support for some of the administration's signature immigration policies. So basically, Trump's approval on immigration is down. People approve of and want more immigration. More people support a pathway to citizenship. Only 38% support mass deportation. That number needs to go down a lot more, brother, but at least it's going down. This is all good stuff. Partisans' views on immigration's effect on the U.S. on the whole. Do you think immigration is a good thing or a bad thing for this country today? It's gone up even among Republicans, but particularly among independents and Democrats. Which then begs the question, what in the hell was Joe Brandon and subsequently Kamala Harris thinking when they were so anti-immigration? It doesn't make any sense. If these dumb-ass geriatric, way past their prime and ready for retirement pieces of garbage got out of the way and actually did the right thing by people, they would have won the election probably. That's my opinion anyway. Much the same way that if Democrats were forcefully against the far-right nation-state of Israel's actions, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, against the Palestinians, the atrocities therein, I believe that would have helped them not lose the election in 2024 as well. It's very unfortunate, but it seems to me that as long as you can actually effectively utilize your rhetoric to be in favor of immigration, be in favor of a pathway to citizenship, be in favor of making it easier to become an American citizen, if you can explain how that completely undercuts all of the concerns outside of the racist ones, I suppose, that people have of immigration, like, oh, they're taking our jobs. It turns out the primary reason why CEOs with more money than God would prefer to hire illegal, quote-unquote, immigrants, undocumented immigrants, is because they can hold the threat of deportation over their head in order to pay them essentially nothing to do the same work that you might be federally required to be paid at least $7.25 to do. The fact that the labor market for the American citizen in that regard is slanted away from you and in favor of an undocumented immigrant is the fault of the CEO, the boss who is hiring that person. And the reason for why they have that advantage and the reason why they act against making it easier for immigrants to attain citizenship is precisely because they can exploit undocumented immigrants better than they can exploit you for your labor. They federally, contractually have to pay you at least $7.25 an hour. They can pay undocumented immigrants whatever the hell they want. And I can guarantee you it's not going to be $7.25. I can guarantee you it's probably not even going to be $3.50. Because what are they going to do? They go to their boss and they're like, hey, I would like a raise because like the working conditions are terrible. People are getting injured, which makes their ability to work even harder, which makes them a worse worker for you if you want to look at it in a selfish way as a fucking CEO. I'm not able to afford to pay my bills, etc. And it's exceedingly harder for me to actually try to become a legal citizen in this country because of all the shit I have to deal with on this front. The boss is just going to be like, get the hell out of here. no habla español. They're gonna kick him out, and if they continue to, you know, get all uppity and want, like, their human rights to be respected, they'll just be like, hey, ICE, I got some, you know, additional numbers to pad the quota here. Don't look at the other ones who haven't actually asked for a raise, though. They're the ones allowing me to make a lot of money. They're my human capital stock, the livestock that generates wealth for me, so I don't have to do anything at all. You know, like, that's... If you were able to make it so that those people, those undocumented immigrants, very easily became citizens, they are now on a level playing field for you, Joe American, who's a citizen, because they also have to be paid a minimum wage. So they no longer have that advantage, I guess, in your eyes, if you don't understand that they're also being exploited like you would be, just worse. Like, that so-called advantage that you think that they have, that is propagandized to you that they have, is gone. And it's better for them, and it's better for you. Primary person that's worse off there is the fucking boss, the CEO, the person that could buy your entire family with the amount of money they have by, like, dropping a couple bills of their net worth on the floor by accident. Those are the people that get hurt because it makes it harder for them to exploit people for their labor, man. If you can explain that in such a way that can resonate with people, turns out people, generally speaking, are not evil monsters that are going down to the newest concentration camp in Florida and getting merch and parading it around. Turns out a majority of people are just decent people who want right to be done by people immigrating to the country, if you can actually deliver that information to them. But turns out, you know, the Brandon administration and then Kamala Harris, who already had a difficult job because of Joe Biden's absolute torpedoing of the party and its chances in the election, and then her not being a good candidate either in many ways, especially on immigration, where she was going to be one of the toughest on immigration, and yada, yada, yada. It might have actually helped you to win if you were able to do that. I don't know. Might have been able to increase your chances at victory. It's very unfortunate, man. And it's the same way, in my view, with the atrocities that the Palestinian people are suffering at the hands of the right-wing state of Israel. My understanding is polls have shifted, where previously Americans would be more in favor of the state of Israel, are now against their actions and have more sympathy for the Palestinians. If you had run on that, perhaps, being against the genocide, you may have aided your ability to win. Dems don't care about winning, they only want to attack someone to the left of them. That, I think, is not accurate. I don't think there's a political motivation there insofar as they are attacking people to the left of them. They just want to maintain the amount of money that they're getting to run their campaigns and the consultancy jobs that they can get in a variety of different corporations after they get out of office. That's what the establishment Democrats and corporate Democrats want. It just so happens that any left-wing insurgency into the Democratic Party, which isn't beholden to those big money interests, makes it harder for them to justify their continuing relationship with their corporate dominance, making it more likely they end up losing their position of power to someone actually beholden to the will of the people. They understand that anti-corporate pro-worker policies would harm their masters, and therefore have to extinguish those threats at any possible chance they get. I don't know that it's strictly a political differences thing, but more so a self-preservation thing. Of course, it's possible that there are those in the party establishment whose political ideologies play a role in their opposition to pro-worker challengers, but I don't know. It just feels like giving a lot of them too much credit for what seems to just amount to prey animal instinctual responses to their own, in this case, financial well-being. They are unfortunately shackled, leashed by corporate interests. The leash of corporate interests that lead the Democratic Party will be the noose that hangs it. 100%. A hostile takeover of the party needs to be done by people not beholden to corporate interests that then push for a very strong, very unapologetic pro-worker agenda that is directly antagonistic to the interests of business, of capital. It's the only way that they can possibly hope to win. The corporate donors and all the people with more money than God that have extra to throw around to political campaigns so that they get a little bit more money off of the back of your Meemaw having to work until she's 90 instead of being able to, you know, live off of Social Security, Medicare, and being able to enjoy the golden years of her life with dignity and not die getting blood squeezed out of her to make more money for a CEO somewhere that she's never met. Those corporate interests already give insane amounts of money to the Republican Party, often more than they do to the Democratic Party, but they give to both. You know, it's like that Always Sunny episode. They play both sides so they always come out on top, but in this case, they're actually effective at it. The corporate Democrats in the Democratic Party are either wittingly or unwittingly being utilized as controlled opposition. This is not to say the entire party is. There's good Democrats out there that act against those interests and fight against them, and we need more of those. But that is one of the strategies that the mega wealthy in this country have utilized, and it turns out that they don't really care as much anymore about maintaining that. Because they've realized that, especially with Donald Trump, the facade of a democracy that we've had isn't as necessary anymore. Because the Republican Party has gotten so far right, so pro-capital, so pro-the wealthy, that they're willing to go against democratic forces, that's small d democratic forces, democracy, to do whatever it is they want to do, and the Democratic Party is hopeless in trying to stop them. So there's not as much of a reason to like want a Democrat to win if you're a mega wealthy person, because the Republicans will give you everything you want and more. So like the party is dying, and the only way to save it is by decoupling it from those corporate interests and moving its rhetoric and its policy platform to be outwardly antagonistic to the wealthy and strongly in support of protecting workers. It's how it's been done in the past. There is a lot of precedent for it being effective if you can do it, because there will always be more regular ass people than there are these mega wealthy people. And sentiments against the mega wealthy have only gotten worse and worse as time has gone on. So there's even a cultural want for people to have a political force against the mega wealthy. There's even people that are, cheering on for somebody like Luigi Mangione, which I must say, on this platform, it is important that I mention that violence, never acceptable. But there are people that were very excited at the idea of, absent any other possible non-violent option that has not worked, and the powerlessness that they have felt at the hands of these mega wealthy CEOs, which in this case was spurred on by the absurd costs to attain healthcare in the United States of America. They've even gotten so far as to post all kinds of shit in support of a guy who yoinked the CEO. And, if I was a mega wealthy CEO, I'd be worried about that. And it seems like they are. And that's why they're more and more okay with the Republican Party and Donald Trump being as dictatorial and authoritarian as possible. I think much the same way that it's speculated that after the Big Bang, once all that energy dissipates and it's spreading out, there will be a great contraction back into a singular point, and which will then spur on another Big Bang. It seems as if we are contracting back in our political system to a sort of feudalism, where these mega wealthy people are trying to be kings in spite of the facsimile of democracy we have in this country. And ideally, the Democrats should be on the forefront of protecting the small amount of democratic systems we have, as well as instituting more safeguards against people threatening it, aka the entirety of the fucking Republican Party, and also some members of their own party. See also the way that Lula da Silva, who was victim of a judicial coup, which allowed Jair Bolsonaro to gain power in Brazil, who was called the, quote, Trump of the tropics, and was a very, very far-right candidate, after Lula da Silva ends up being, able to run for office again, and actually wins because he has been not perfect, but very good on a variety of issues when it comes to workers. He was a metal worker himself early on in his life. He then uses the power of the state that he has to prosecute the anti-democratic actions that were taken against him. Because if it can happen to him, they can do it to other people. And slowly but surely, your democracy is eroded to the point where you're back to having a king. And I seem to remember that. I wasn't there for it, but there was a kind of like a big protest almost. It might have been violent against a king in this country before it was even country. But anyway, I digress. I'll say it once, I'll say it a million times. We got to move away from the first past the post voting system. A proportional voting system is ideal. A ranked choice voting system is good enough for now. It's a good step. Moving toward getting that in your local elections, in your citywide and statewide elections, and then hopefully federally, much the same way that, the legalization of cannabis has been done, where it was done in Washington and Colorado for recreational use, and then more and more people realize that as long as you're responsible with it, it's not worse than alcohol. Why is it illegal? More and more states legalize, and there's a variety of systemic reasons why it's not been federally legalized, but like a lot of different states allow for it now. And that would be the same kind of strategy, hopefully, that would work for moving away from first past the post voting system, because you're not going to be able to do it from the top down. You're not going to be able to just go straight up presidency. it's now ranked choice voting. It's now a proportional voting system. Shit don't work like that. You gotta work from the ground up. So trying to get it in those ways and then using those different races like the one Zoran Mamdani won in the ranked choice voting system that the mayoral election in New York City uses, once people realize how good that system can be and how it increases the amount of say people have in the election of the people that are supposed to represent them in their political system, turns out people start to like it more. And they're like, why can't we have that too? And then they start organizing for it, hopefully in their cities, and then eventually statewide for their senators, even for the governor, etc., etc. And then enough states start to do it that, hey, maybe the president should be elected this way too. That's the ideal. Because right now, third parties are not mathematically viable. Because the first past the post voting system, this is why the Democrats or Republicans will never be very forcefully trying to move away from that electoral system and will fight any kind of move toward it as well. You've seen after Zoran Mamdani won the primary for mayor in New York City, there's a lot of people on both sides of the fence that started aiming their anger at the ranked choice voting system. It's because it allows for more democracy. They don't like that. That is the path forward. And then this is a good sign. It's unfortunate that it's happening in what it seems like the response to people witnessing the absolute horrific actions of what mass deportation entails, of what being violently anti-immigration entails. It sucks that that might have played a role in this change of the American perspective on the issue. But if the Democratic Party right now could take advantage of this and maybe run on it, if we have an election for 2028, maybe it would help them. I don't know. Could be.